Hello everybody, it's Elizabeth Harrin here, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about working with suppliers. In particular, 5 things you should know before you enter into a relationship with a new supplier for your projects. So let's look at what 5 things are top of mind for me when I start working with a new supplier. And I mean, even before you've really signed the contract, what are the kind of things you need to know to make sure they are in a good position to support your project and that your organisation is going to have a fruitful and useful working relationship with them throughout the life of the project. So there's all the stuff that you normally do about request for information and getting a price and a quote and all that kind of stuff. But let's go a bit beyond that and think about what else we need to know about suppliers in order to kick off that working relationship in the best possible way. The first thing to consider is how solvent the organisation is. Doesn't matter what size they are for now, but it's important because we want to work with businesses that are credible and that are going to be around in the long term. It is really not fun to be in a situation with a project supplier who's going bankrupt halfway through a project. That hasn't happened to me, but we have been in a situation where we have almost contracted with someone and they failed the solvency check that the legal department did at the very last hurdle. And we had hours of discussion and debate about how we would work together, and all of that was basically wasted. So ask your finance and legal team to carry out their standard background checks on the organisation. So they should have the access to information to be able to do that, to be able to find it from the right kind of sources, and they might outsource checks to a third party. But either way, you want to do some kind of sort of business credibility check. You'll get back from those checks information about how the company has performed financially and whether or not it's a going concern, whether or not it's actually going to be around to support you far into the future. Now, that might not bother you particularly, but you may well find that your organisation prefers to do business with people who have organizations that have good credit rating and that they have the chance of being around long term to be able to support the organization going forward. And that simple solvency check will solve a lot of headaches for you in the future. The next thing to consider is how big the organization is. Now, it might not matter materially to their ability to support you on the project, but it is quite a different experience working with a major multinational global company that has offices all over the world to working with a local supplier with 3 staff. A small design studio could be one person sitting in their office at home doing the design work for your project in comparison to a multinational global design agency, for example. That's not to say stay away from small firms, but be aware if you're doing so that they may well find it harder to support you if they have an influx of work. Taking on a big contract is also quite a risk for a small firm, because if you decide not to continue to use them after the project has completed, for example, they may then have a massive, great big hole in their cash flow because they've got to go out and get similar size contracts. And they could lose the large deal. They might then potentially struggle, and that might cause problems for you getting their support later if they are not as able to support you. With a big company, I've certainly found the opposite. When we've been a medium-sized company working with a big company, we are not important in terms of the client relationship because they obviously have larger clients, larger customers who win more of their attention. So you're kind of a poor relation if you're a small or medium-sized company in a large global ecosystem of clients. So just think about the size of the business and the kind of relationship that would give you as you work together on the project. The third thing to think about is estimating. How have they prepared their estimates? Look for a list of assumptions, which should be in the proposal document, and they will explicitly say, hopefully, if the proposal includes taxes and expenses, or per diems for their staff, which is a flat rate for staff who are working away from home, or maybe they're working on your site. It's supposed to cover things like lunches, laundry, phone calls, and all that kind of stuff. And it's paid directly to the staff member from you, so you'll be billed for it, and it is different from expenses. It's often excluded, in my experience, from the quoted price. So if you think that might be an issue, just read the small print, ask. I've been caught out with that before. And then suddenly you've got a handful of contractors all based at your site for 6 months. The per diems can be quite substantive. So just check how those estimates are put together and what elements go into it, especially around staff welfare. Next, think about their working hours. I've worked with suppliers who are based outside of the UK, and obviously different countries have different national holidays. So we had to have an agreement around what the working hours would be. Do we want them to work UK working hours and have UK bank holidays off, or Spanish bank holidays off, or a combination? Or, it doesn't matter what the answer is, but it's just worth having a little bit of transparency around what you are expecting, so that both you and the supplier are on the same page and you have an idea of what's going to be acceptable going forward. I think you could write it into the contract, but personally I think it's a bit mean to expect people to forget about their own national holidays when everyone else around them will be on holiday, especially their friends and family. So, you need to be a little bit people aware when you're making those kind of contractual decisions, or perhaps you'd rather just have an open conversation and see how things go. It very much depends on the culture of your organization, their culture, and what your team is expecting. You might often want to check what hours they are going to be available to you. So here in the UK, for example, if we had a contract with someone in New Zealand or an organisation based in Australia, that would make it very difficult to find working time when we could both be together. And at the moment, actually, I'm working with a design agency based in Australia with offices also in the Philippines. And the time difference means that by the time they've completed a task, they've then pretty much gone to bed by the time I pick it up. And that gives us a whole 24 hours delay in the approval process because of the time it takes just with the time difference. So consider that, especially if you think the kind of work that they would be involved with may involve urgent changes, or you need to get in touch with someone to discuss on a regular basis. Next up, staffing. Find out who's going to be allocated to the project. You'll want to have confidence that the consultants they put forward are going to be capable of doing the work. They've got relevant experience. They're going to be around to the end. That's probably the most important thing. And that can be a challenge if you're not certain in your own timelines, because what's happened to us in the past, we've had good working relationships with a group of consultants. We've then had a delay at our end. The consultants have gone off to work on another client's project. And when we've been ready to start, those people with all the knowledge of our project and our organisation are no longer available. So you're then onboarding new team members. And okay, they do a great handover. It's what you would expect with an agency, with a consultancy, but it's not the same as working with people that you've already got that relationship with. So consider whether that's going to be an option. Are you going to get dedicated staff? Are you going to have, any pair of hands? Perhaps either of those options are fine, but you need to be making a decision about what is acceptable for you in this particular environment. You can also, while we're talking about staffing, get some references for the people who are working on the project. That can be really helpful just as a final check that this is the kind of organisation that you would like to work with. All right, so what else do you consider when you're selecting and securing third parties to work on your projects? You can let us know in the comments. And to recap, the 5 things I've talked about today are solvency, business credibility, size of the business, how they estimate, what their working hours are, and their staffing levels and staff experience. All right, I hope that's been useful for you when you've been thinking about setting up work with third-party contractors. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.